We reached the cove at late afternoon. The light was low and coming from the southwest, which put the headland face in shadow by the time we came ashore. Hannah anchored the launch in the same position as before. Maren went first up the rock shelf. I followed with the canvas bag. The shelf looks the same. I want to record that as the first observation because I expected it not to. The fitting was prepared and the guidelines cut themselves after the assessment pause. The offshore structure opened and closed. The device passed through several distinct operational states. The second key changed in some way I cannot precisely describe. All of that happened while we were away from this shelf, and I came back expecting the stone to reflect it. Some further change, some new development in the prepared section. The stone looks the same. Guidelines cut, precise, the fitting geometry clear. The organized marks to the right are unchanged. The prepared section is the same 61 by 38 centimeters it was when we left it. No new marks, no alteration in the surface texture, no indication that anything occurred here during the hours we spent over the offshore structure. I photographed the prepared section from 3 distances and compare against the photographs Hannah took during our first visit. The measurements are consistent. The guidelines are not deeper. The surface texture inside the fitting is not different. If the system processed something while we were away, it did not process it here. I write, coastal site, no visible modification since departure. All geometry consistent with previous documentation. Change, if any, is not in the stone. I look at the canvas bag. Maren is at the edge of the shelf, the same position she occupied when she recognized the prepared surface on our first visit. She has not gone to examine the fitting. She is watching me. Hannah is at the organized mark section, running a comparison against her earlier photographs the same way I ran it against mine. She confirms what I found. No change in the existing marks. The syntax structure is identical to what she documented before. She says, the stone waited. Not a conclusion. An observation about what the absence of change implies. The stone was prepared and it waited, and whatever the system was doing during our time offshore, the coastal site was not the location where it happened. The location where it happened was the key. I take the second key out of the canvas bag and hold it in my right hand. The same grip as before, flat in the palm, bow upward, blade down. I am aware as I do this of the quality I noted on the Morwenna during the return transit. The key sitting differently in the bag. A change in presence that I described then as something I lacked vocabulary for. Holding it now, in my hand, I still do not have the vocabulary, but the difference is clearer at this distance and in this light. The key is the same weight it was when I first examined it on the Morwenna. The dimensions are unchanged. The title shelf stamp is where it was on the inner shaft. But the key has a quality now that it did not have when I first put it in the canvas bag in the chart room. A readiness, if that word means anything in this context. A state of something pending. The way a compass needle is ready before it has found north, it has not yet arrived at its direction, but it carries the capacity for direction. I am aware that this is interpretive language, and I am using it deliberately because I do not have better language, and the observation seems important enough to record even imprecisely. I take key 47 from my jacket pocket and hold it in my left hand. The same grip, flat, bow up, blade down. Key 47 does not have the same quality. It is what it has always been, a brass key, worn on the blade side, the title shelf stamp on the inner shaft. Familiar in the way an object becomes familiar when you have carried it for 2 years, but it does not have the readiness the second key has now. The offshore structure did something to one key and not the other. I write that down and immediately note that I cannot confirm the causal claim. What I can confirm is that the 2 keys feel different in ways they did not before the offshore structure event, and the difference is not physical in any way I can measure. I look at the prepared section and I take 3 steps toward it. At 2 meters from the fitting, nothing changes. The device in the canvas bag is quiet, continuous baseline tone, pointing at the fitting the way it has pointed at it since we arrived. No new behavior. The guidelines are as I documented them. The stone is still. At 1.5 meters, nothing changes. At 1 meter, I stop and hold position. The device tone modulates. The oscillation, the breathing quality between the two keys begins. Familiar from previous sessions at this site. The device reading the pair, the interval running. I count 11 seconds. The interval is back. I hold very still and count 2 more full cycles. 11 seconds. 11 seconds. The network rhythm, the rhythm that has underlain every significant moment in the investigation, absent since the alignment attempt in episode 68, has returned. I tell Hannah. She comes and stands beside me and counts with me through 2 cycles. She nods. I take 1 more step toward the fitting. 80 centimeters. The interval does not shorten. At every previous approach to this surface, the interval tightened as I closed distance. Here, at 80 centimeters, it holds at 11 seconds. No compression. The system is not responding to proximity the way it did before. Hannah says, "It's not responding to how close you are." I say I know. I move the second key slightly in my palm, a small rotation, the blade shifting angle, and the interval changes. Not shorter, different. A different quality in the counting, a slight weight to the 11-second beat that was not there before. The interval is responding to the key's orientation, not my distance from the stone. I rotate the second key back to flat, and the weight leaves the interval. I rotate it again and it returns. Hannah watches me do this 3 times. She says, "The stone is reading the key, not the distance, not my position, the configuration of the key itself." I try the same rotation with key 47, no response in the interval. The 11-second beat continues without change regardless of how I orient the first key. The offshore structure altered the second key's relationship to the system, and the stone is reading that alteration. Not my proximity, not my intention, the specific state of one specific artifact. I write interval response now key orientation dependent, not position dependent. Second key produces interval weight variation. Key 47 does not. Stone is reading the second key's state. I spend 20 minutes mapping the orientation responses. The second key held flat and level produces a clean 11-second interval with no additional weight. Rotated clockwise produces the weight I noted. Rotated counterclockwise produces a different variation. The interval is the same period, but the quality changes again, a lightness rather than a weight, as though the interval has a positive and negative response to blade direction. I document all of this, and then I step back and look at the guidelines in the fitting. The guide arcs, the center mass point, the geometry radiating outward from the known center. The fitting is 61 centimeters wide, 38 centimeters tall. 2 keys laid parallel, bows adjacent, would span approximately 60 centimeters. That calculation I made during our first visit and did not write down and wrote only as a hypothesis. I'm writing it now, more clearly. The fitting was designed for 2 keys placed parallel, held by 2 people, bows adjacent at the top of the fitting, blades extending downward. The orientation that produces the weighted interval response in the second key is the orientation of a key being held for placement, not for use. Bow upward in a flat palm. Offered rather than operational. I look at key 47 in my left hand. I look at the second key in my right. Then Hannah says from 2 steps behind me, "Listen." I listen. The 11-second interval, the device oscillation, the rhythm I have been counting in the device tone, is no longer only in the device. It is in the stone. Not a sound exactly, a vibration. Coming up through the rock shelf from whatever depth the stone connects to, passing through my boot soles and into my legs, the way the offshore structure's 17-second rhythm passed through the hull and into the Morwena's fabric. But this is the 11-second rhythm, the network interval, present in this stone, at this site, on this coastal shelf. The stone is running the interval, not the device, not the water, not the distant offshore structure. The stone under my feet, the same material as the tidal shelf below the accumulation site, the same continuous construction that we confirmed runs from the headland face down through the cliff and into the sea. This stone is running the 11-second count. I look at Hannah. She has her hand flat on the rock shelf surface, feeling it. She says, "That started when you moved the key to placement orientation." I think back through the orientation mapping, the flat and level position, the clockwise rotation I called weighted. I had been doing that mapping for 20 minutes. I had been focused on the device response and had not been monitoring the stone itself. The stone started running the interval when the second key reached the orientation the fitting was designed for. Maren is standing at the edge of the prepared section now, not behind us. She moved while I was mapping orientations. She is close enough to see the fitting geometry and the key in my hand, but she is not reaching. She is watching. She says, "The stone took over the timing source." I look at her. She says, "That's what the offshore confirmation did. It transferred the interval to the site." She pauses. "The site is ready." That is more than she has said about system mechanics in any single statement since she arrived. I wait to see if more follows. She looks at the fitting, then at the keys. She says, "The device is not the reader anymore. It's just present." I look at the device in the canvas bag, the continuous baseline tone, the directional station at the prepared section. It has been pointing at this site since the chart room on the Morwenna. It guided us here. It tracked the offshore structure. It measured orientations and intervals and registered contact signatures. But it is not what is running the interval now. The stone is. The device is a witness, the same way we are witnesses. Hannah says very quietly, "What is it waiting for?" The stone vibrates under my feet. 11 seconds. 11 seconds. The interval as steady as I have ever heard it, steadier than the device ever ran it, coming from the ground itself. I look at the fitting. I look at both keys. I take one step forward and stop. In the fitting, in the prepared section, in the 61 by 38 centimeter space that has been waiting since before the archive existed, the guidelines are glowing. Not the deep red of the tidal shelf stamp on the key shaft. Something warmer. A faint amber light coming from inside the incisions, from whatever depth the guide cuts reach into the stone, as though there is a heat source below the surface that has been waiting for the right conditions to become visible. The amber light runs the full length of every guide arc. The center mass point is brightest. The fitting is lit from within. It is showing us exactly where to put them.